Hey everyone, in this video you're going to be creating a snake game using pure JavaScript. You'll just need a text editor. You'll be able to control the snake with the keyboard. You're going to have a score counter at the upper left. And if you run into your own tail or hit the walls, you'll lose the game. So I'm pumped to go ahead and get started. Alright, so the first thing we'll do is we are going to add a new folder of type snake game. And inside of that folder, we're going to add an HTML document, snakegame.html. Now, since this is the only web page I'm going to create, and I'm not going to create different JavaScript folders or CSS, I don't need to make a separate folder for my JavaScript. I can simply do game.js, and I can leave it right there. And I can also do new style.css, and that way it's just one less step we're going to have to do when we're in Sublime text. Not a huge difference, but you open up your folder and you go to your snake game, and our snake game has game.js, snake game HTML, and your style.css. So if you go on your snakegame.html, you can create your HTML. Let me make this a little bit bigger for us. Go to HTML tab, and that'll create your skeleton for you, and we can just call it snake game. And inside of our below our title, we can link our style.css instead of having css/style.css to access inside of a folder. Since we have the file just right here, we can simply do style.css. And the first thing we should do is also add in our script to make sure that that is correct. Change the type to our source src, and our JS folder is called game.js. And now we can just double check alert, make sure this is always connected. Feel confident that it's connected, you don't need to do this. Then you can open up this folder, open up your HTML, and this alert should show up so you know your JavaScript is connected. Okay, then you go back inside your HTML. Now the only thing we're going to do in our HTML is we're going to set up a canvas for us. And it's a good idea to call it, name it something, give it an ID. There's only going to be one canvas, so we can just give it one ID name. And the canvas will also have a width that is equal to 600, that is equal to 600 as well. Okay, and then just so we test, we know the size, it's a good idea to do canvas in your CSS styling. So your style.css, canvas, and then background color, black, and that will show us, okay, does our CSS actually, our canvas actually pop up? Yes, it does. Perfect. I'm going to go ahead and take the alert out in our game.js, and we're going to get started with our JavaScript. Okay, so first thing we're going to need to do is have a ability to reference our canvas. So if we just call this canvas equals document.get element by ID canvas, and then if we have a constant, that will be our context equals our canvas.get context 2D. Okay, so this context, this canvas.get context, will allow us to access the canvas and do different things like draw and design some certain things on our canvas. And so we are also going to create a box, and that will just be our box for our snake. And our snake will be able to have a specific size that we will use throughout. We're going to have a constant width and height, and so our constant canvas size, I'm going to call it, is going to equal 20. And this is going to be both our width and our height. So the first thing we're going to draw to the screen is we're going to draw the background. And we're going to draw multiple things. So we're going to create a draw function. And so first we're going to say draw. And I'm going to go ahead and put this outside of that draw background comment. And the first thing we're going to do in here is we're going to use the context dot fill style. Now this is kind of getting a color and setting up what color we're going to use next. And if we do light green, this will not do anything quite yet, but if we add one more, ctx dot fill rectangle, and we start this at box, canvas size times box minus 1. Now why minus box? Now why do we do it like this? Well, if we keep these as variables, you can change the size of the boxes and change the pixel size of your snake and of the size of your world. So as opposed to putting hard numbers in there that you can't change all at once, if we do canvas size times box minus box. So now that we have this fill rectangle box, this is our starting X value for our box and our starting Y value for our box. This will be the entire size of the canvas is 20 boxes wide minus 1 box, so it gives it a box of a border. So now that we have this draw function set up, let me show you how it works. So if we do let game equal set interval draw, and we're going to draw every 1/10 of a second, so we're keeping up pretty good pace, so that our game is really going. Then if we save and we go back in and we refresh, this is built. Now clearly I've made mine a little bit larger than I expected. I need to make it a little bit larger than I originally expected. So instead of having to go back in and change these numbers around, I can simply, I'm pretty sure it's 2, I was too short. So then I can put in 2, looks like maybe 3, and it'll automatically change all of these so that now I have a picture perfect border. And we're going to be using canvas size and box all the time throughout our code. So that's good that we have that and we can manipulate it. So now we have an active canvas getting drawn and an active background getting drawn on our screen. And the ctx.fillStyle and ctx.fillRectangles is what we're going to be using a lot throughout this code. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to load our snake. Load snake starting position. Okay, and so to build our snake, we don't just want one box snake, and the snake is going to be moving one box at a time, but it all needs to function within one series. We need to declare the snake as equal to a list or an array. And so that you do that with the open close bracket. And we can actually say that our snake at index 0, so the first location of our snake, will equal a certain x value and y value. So we can set our x value equal to our canvas size divided by 2 times box. Okay, and we know that that will be the first location that we want to start near the center of our screen. So that'll be the size of the canvas divided by 2 times box. Now, in order to draw that on there, we need to go into our draw function. and draw the snake head. And so if we drew the snake head, which we're going to do this in two parts. First I'm going to show you this. Equals green. And same way, fill rectangle. And the starting position will be our snake at index 0 dot x, which we've given right here. We've given the x value is going to start right in the center. And then our snake 0 dot y. And then we're going to have a width and a height of box and box, so that our width and height, we're not multiplying box by anything, but we're just going to be a full square, a full box here. And that'll be the size of our snake. Now, if we draw that out, let's see what that looks like. Okay, we have our box in the center. And we're going to change a couple things on here, because I believe since this has an odd numbered size canvas, that we will be halfway between two boxes, and I don't want that. And so I'm going to have our canvas size divide by 2, but I'm going to do a MathTopFloor, so we know that we are rounding down. And that is a good way to ensure that and that's going to be before we multiply by our pixels. So I want to multiply by box after we round down. So canvas divided by 2 would be 23 divided by 2, which would give you 11 and a half. And then you multiply by box, which multiply by 25. I don't want to do that. I want to make sure it's a whole number, so that we are, instead of maybe in between, like this would be 1 pixel, 1 box right here, and then this would be another box right here. I just want to move to one of these. And so that way, when our food shows up, our snake will run directly and line up with our food, instead of being halfway between one food and another and mess us all up. So let's do it. Go ahead and do MathTopFloor right there. Okay, but I don't want to just make one snake. I don't want to keep rewriting this for every new snake that we get. And so this is where a loop comes in, and we can just do a for loop, and it'll be as simple as doing for let I equal 0, let I equal 0, semicolon, I less than the length of the array. Now the good thing about this, and this is used all the time in creating loops, is using an array alongside it, is that as we add to this snake and it grows more and more and more and more, our loop will automatically add them in as green, and we will edit this so that it keeps going. And then we'll just do I++, so it'll keep adding 1 to I. And then so our first time through the loop, I will equal 0, and that will be the snake's head. But as we continue through the loop over and over, our I increases as we keep adding blocks to the snake. And so as you make this, don't forget to use the correct curly brackets. Make sure you have an open and a closed curly bracket, and help yourself out by lining these up correctly, so that you can see it nice and pretty. And maybe space out your comments a little bit too, so you know where, okay, draw the snake head and tail. Okay, so that's what we're doing there. So then, once we add to it, this should work the exact same right now, because we haven't added to it. This should just move it a little bit up and to the left, and then allow us so that when we add to the snake, it'll keep moving forward. So now we need to move the snake. So we have it built here, but we need to be able to move it. And so outside of our draw function, we are going to create a separate function. And first we're going to create a variable called direction. And so direction is going to check for a key being pressed. So we're going to add event listener, document.addEventListener, and then key down, all lowercase. And then the function that we're going to be calling when a key is pushed down is going to be called direction. Okay, and so we are going to create function direction, and this is going to require an event to get passed to it, meaning when direction gets used, in order for it to work, we need to have the key that's getting pressed, and that is what we are going to call the event. So the event is going to check if a key is getting pressed. So if event, the key that we're getting pressed, dot key code, so the key code of that event, and each key on the keyboard has its own key code or number assigned to it, and starting with left is 37, and then it goes clockwise. Up is 38, and then right is 39, and then down is 40. So that gets used all of the time in programming games. And so to start off, we're going to have event equal 37, and direction equals left. Okay, and then we can use a semicolon here. Now, 2 equal signs and 3 equal signs gets used at different times, but I'm not going to go into that just yet. But here we're going to use 2 equal signs. Copy, paste, paste, paste. I'm going to change this to 38, 39, and 40. And then our key code will be up, right, and then down. And so here we have, this is a great function to save and always have on tap so that you can control things with the arrow keys. And this will just set the direction of your arrow keys. And then once you have that, you can go inside of the function and start moving our snake. And so up there, we set direction getting pressed by arrow keys. Okay, and this will move the snake head, because we are really just moving the snake head and the tail is following along, right? So in order to move the snake head, we are going to give our snake at the snake head an X and a Y value. So snake X is going to be snake at 0.x, and snake Y equals snake 0.y. And if our direction equals left, we can do snake X minus equals 1 box, so it'll move. And actually, for the time being, so it works for us right now, and so you can see, we're gonna do snake at 0.x, and then we can copy that and paste, 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 and we'll do right, and we'll do plus box, up will be minus our y value, getting closer to the 0, and y value for down, and y will get further from the 0, further from the top. And refresh it. You'll be able to move your snake around the screen. Okay, okay, so the next thing we're going to do is draw our food. And so just for an example, we're going to just draw our food straight in first. Draw in food. You guys can wait to do this, or you can do it now with me. Fill style, it won't take long. Red. And then ctx.fill rectangle. And then we can do canvas size -1. And then we can multiply this by our box. And then that will be the X value and the Y value location. This is how we could manipulate our one single food's location, and our width will be a box width and a box height. So this will take the entire canvas side and go to the bottom right corner, then go one less than that. So our canvas size is 23, so it'll get us at 22, 22 location. and then multiply that by box so that it's the perfect position in the bottom right corner. So as you can see, if you refresh that, it stays in that bottom right corner, exactly where we want it. If we wanted it to be -5, -5, it could be just moved in 5 spaces in, 4 spaces in, 4 more spaces in, up. If we wanted it to be, you know, at the upper left corner, we could just leave it at box and box. And the reason I'm showing you this is so that you guys can manipulate it. We're going to make it randomly in there. So we'll change this bottom part in a second, but let's go ahead and add it in. And we're going to set the location of our food. And so similar to how we did our snake, we're going to let our food equal, and it's not going to be an array, it's just going to be 2 values. And we're going to make an X value for our food and a Y value. Okay. And so the first thing that we're going to need to know is that our food needs to randomly generate within this green part of our map here. We do not want our food to generate along this line. Okay, so we're going to make it randomly generate within that, and so we'll do MathTopFloor, and this makes sure that it is an integer, because we do not want a decimal value that we multiply by box so that it shows up in between, you know, our 2 different spaces. We want these to be blocked like a grid, so our snake can only move along the grid and the food can only be in the grid positions. And so that's why we start with MathTopFloor, and then we're going to have it be math.random, and this function gives us a random number between 0 and 1.0, but not including 1.0. It could include 0, but it will not include 1.0. So 0.999 repeating is the highest number it could be. So then the use of that is that if you multiply it by, let's say I multiplied it by 10, that would get me a random number between 0 and 9. And since we did MathTopFloor, it would be a random integer number between 0 and 9. Now, we need it to be a random number between 0 and 23. And then we're going to multiply that 0 and 23 and times it by 25 by box so that it will be, you know, this many pixels to be on this box or wherever it randomly generates to. So we are going to do math.random times CanvasSize. And now, just like we did CanvasSize -1, we're going to, because we don't want it along the edge, we're going to need to do CanvasSize -1 so it won't be along this edge or this edge. So we'll do CanvasSize -1, but that is going to need its own entire set of parentheses. So you want to make sure that this parentheses is covered and this parentheses is covered so that this is done by itself. CanvasSize -1, because we don't want that 23 showing up, we just want 22. Okay. Now, we also don't want it to show up along this side, on the left side or the top. So we are going to need to add 1 to the very beginning of this number as well before the random number even gets generated. So this random number gets generated and is going to be multiplied by CanvasSize -1, but we want it to at least have a value of 1 before that even happens. So that is going to get its own parentheses and its own 1 plus. So at minimum it's going to be 1. Then we'll get a random number between 0 and CanvasSize -1. So that would normally be 22, but since random number cannot equal 1 entirely, it has to equal 0.999, and then it will round down. This will actually just get a random number between 0 and 21 instead of 22. But then we will add 1 to it to get a random number between, instead of 0 and 21, it'll be a random number between 1 and 22, which is exactly what we want. Because if canvas size is 23, we know we don't want 0, and we know we don't want actual canvas size, so we don't want 23. So a random number between 1 and 22 is exactly what we want. Phew. Then, after you get math.floor, and you do this, and make sure that it's truncated down to a integer, you want to times by box. Oh, so after we do all that explaining, we need to make sure that this works, okay? And so make sure your parentheses are correct. Hopefully mine are correct. We will double check, and we're gonna change these from being at position box. So now we've created food.x and food.y. So those are both locations of food that are random and random. We created that up here. So food.x would be this, food.y would be that. Okay, so now we should randomly generate, and notice that it's right along this line. So that means it's boxed correctly. So we times box in the correct spot. It should be lined up with our, if we run along here, we should float right over it or right alongside it. Yeah, just like that. So that's looking good. And then you can randomly generate and just make sure that it doesn't show up along that black line. And doesn't look like it is, so hopefully that didn't freak you out too much. Okay, next we need to check if the snake eats the food. So first we're gonna go up to the top here, and I'm going to add in score variable, and we're gonna let score equal 0. And then let's go ahead and put right here if the snake eats the food, we can do if snake dot x, and since that didn't work, we're gonna have to continue using the x and y value here. So if snake x equals if snake x equals food dot x and snake y dot y equals food dot y, we will score plus equal 1, and we are going to set our food x and y value randomly along our screen again. So we're going to reset our food basically to a new, but we're not going to do let because we want to do that same food and we want to reset it. So you're going to set your food equal, and you're going to set your x and y value of your food equal to this. So then you refresh that and see if you can capture. Yes, you can, and your score goes up. Okay, and we don't have a space for score. Now if we could go back and change these snake at index 0.x and snake at index 0.y into the variables snake capital X and snake capital Y, they will work now, and that's how we're going to be able to add our tail. Change these back to snake X, and snake Y. This will only work now once we add in a couple more things. So go ahead and change these to make it equal to a variable because we're going to need to use them as variables. And then we are actually going to create a new head for us. So we're going to let new head of our snake equal, and we're going to give it an X value of snake X. So basically the head of our snake, which would be snake at index 0. And then we are going to what we call unshift, snake.unshift. And this will allow our new head to get added to our snake. And make sure these are comma and just nothing, and then semicolon. Whoops. Do that every time. And then if you move your snake around, you can see that now you have your tail. This unshift is adding a new head, a new image of your tail to the back of each one that you've created. Okay, so now we need to make sure that that only happens if this is true. Okay, so if it's true, if we do hit a food, we're going to add one tail to it. But otherwise, if we do not hit a food, we are going to do another method that JavaScript has, which is our pop method. So that will remove the snake and remove the tail for us. So now, as we move around, it quickly, you can't even see, but it gets removed, and that unshift doesn't happen. And now once we click it, you can see our snake getting built as we go along. Okay, but we got a few problems. We can run into our own tail. We can run into the walls. But now we've added one more step to our code. Okay, and so next we're going to go ahead and check for collision. Check collision. And we're going to have a function collision, and we're going to access our collision within our draw. So while the game's going on, we're checking for our collision, and we have our we're going to need a head and an array passed to this collision method, this function. Okay, and so in order for this to happen, we're going to need to check if the head of the snake is touching any other part of the snake. So any of the other indexes of the snake, which would be the tail of the snake essentially. So for let I equal 0, I less than array dot length, comma I plus plus. Okay, so if our head dot x equals array I dot x and head dot y equals array I dot y. So if the head runs into any element inside of the tail, we will return true. And then so if this happens, we return true. Any other time in this function, we're going to return false. And make sure there's a semicolon, not a comma. So once we have that check collision function created, we can check if snake x is less than box, or snake y is less than box, or snake x is greater than canvas size minus 1 times box, canvas size minus 1 times box, and comma or paste snake y is greater than canvas size minus 1 times box. And I'm going to push enter to push this to a new line. And then I'm going to say or, and then I'm going to go to a new line. The collision of new head and snake, if that is true. And if it is, we are going to clear interval game. So if you remember our game that we created down here, we're now using that variable to clear the interval. And if not, we're just going to keep on going. Okay, let's just make sure our snake unshift new head is down below our check for the new head. Check for collision. Okay, so now that we have that, we can actually access our new head, and there I ran into my own tail. And I ran into a wall and I'm frozen. And you want to check your bottom and your top and your left and your right. But I have confidence that mine is working. So the last check will be running into my own tail. Might need to hit a few more to make sure that I get that right. I should be able to do it now. There you go. And I ran into my own tail. And that doesn't work. Now my problem I ran into, I realized, is that I can turn backwards the same direction that I was going. I don't want to be able to do that. I want to have to turn around like you're supposed to. So, and you can run into your own tail by going back the opposite way. So in our event, we're going to also check the only way we can go left is if this is true and direction does not equal right. Does not equal the opposite. So down, left, and up. All right, so we're getting close here. So if we check that, yep, I cannot go back the other way. Excellent. All right, now we're gonna go ahead and draw our score. So down here we can put draw score. And in order to draw our score, we'll do ctx.fill style equals white. ctx.font equals, we'll do 24 pixels. Angle 1, ctx.clear rectangle. Now this allows us to, every time through, it will clear the background and clear the old text that's in there. So we're going to start off that with 0, 0, and that's going to go 50. So 2 boxes to the right and then just 1 box down. So that puts it in this upper left corner, but it'll be 2 boxes over, so it'll clear all the way to here, but it won't go inside of there. And if you experiment with that, you'll see that it would clear it so that it would be black if you did it without doing that the correct way. So ctx.fill text, and we want to put our score in there, and we can do just box, and we're going to do 0.8 box for our y. That gives us a little bit of buffer, so it's 0.8 times box for our y value. And let's go ahead and test that out. And there we go, we have our score. And it sure does count up for us. And you can see how high of a score you can get. And see if you can beat your buddies. Okay, hope you guys enjoyed. That does it for us in the snake game. And if you enjoyed this video and found it useful, I always appreciate a like and subscribe. And make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss the next video. Thanks.